Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's debate organized by Europuls in partnership with the Faculty of Political Science from University of Bucharest. The event is celebrating today International Women's Day and is called Women in Diplomacy, What Future for Young Romanians? We hope that through this discussion we could have a perspective of the lessons learned for empowering the next generation. What women want is the question that we usually ask ourselves. Unfortunately, not quite as often as we would like to, but this is one of the answers that we would like to provide today, to see whether we could understand better the needs of young women that would like to launch themselves into a political career or a diplomatic career, and what exactly are the challenges that they could face or they are facing. I'm very, very honored to welcome today some panelists and some speakers that will have very, very interesting remarks to say to our students. So I am pleased to welcome today Her Excellency Laurent Sauer, Ambassador of Republic of France to Romania, the Embassy of Republic of France in Romania, as well as the Institute of France in Romania. They're also supporting this event today, and we thank you very much for that. We have Her Excellency Diana Riak, the Ambassador of New Zealand in Romania. Welcome and thank you very much for attending our event. We also have together with us Professor Alexandra Iancu, Associate Professor of the Faculty of Political Science, University of Bucharest. Thank you very much for coming today to our event. Maya Angelou once said that each time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up for all women. Unfortunately, in Romania, women dared only timidly and recently to stand up and to pursue their professional ambitions. And 15 years since its accession to the European Union, women in Romania still feel and are, in fact, underrepresented at local, at national, and also at EU level. According to a study conducted by the Expert Forum with the support of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in Romania, the proportion of women in the Romanian parliament remains below 20%. And one can only imagine how difficult it must be in the diplomatic field, in which I'm sure that the competition is even fierce. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has also deepened the pre-existing gender inequalities and leaves us with some pessimistic prospects regarding young women's chances to ascend to high public and political positions. This is why we aim to bring for the first time students from national main university centers to interact with ambassadors, and also you will see later in the afternoon with Romanian representatives within the European diplomatic field in a very open session. The students have filled in a participation form that Europuls has sent to several centers, and we have selected some of the questions, and they will have the opportunity to address them directly in our panel. And we hope that through this approach we will be able to build a safe place for them to address their curiosity and fears, while also learning about international relations and diplomacy through their excellencies' experience. So I think that without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the Associate Professor Alexandra Iancu, and afterwards we will proceed with the discussion. So please, Ms. Iancu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I want to join the previous speaker and just thank you for finding the time in this very difficult context to join us in a debate celebrating the International Women's Day. And my special thanks go, of course, to Europuls for organizing this event. Now, truth be told, the 8th of March has never been about celebration or big celebration. It has been mostly a moment which allowed us to take a step back and just look a bit, review where we were in terms of representation, parity, equality of chances, a sort of a reminder sometimes of the shortcomings in terms of representation. It has also been an opportunity to learn from others and find better solutions in order to reach parity, in order to reach a balanced form of representation in public office. Now, this year, we have to acknowledge that this is particularly challenging to celebrate. Although there are many issues, and my colleagues mentioned them, the Eurobarometer pointing out that women have been particularly hit by the COVID crisis, reports of the women's underrepresentation in public offices, reports on violence, language violence addressed to women, and so on and so forth. But all this seem to pale by comparison when we are looking at our borders, when we are seeing women being murdered, children being murdered. We have seen women bearing arms. We have seen, yes, indeed, women in public office trying to defend our values and our security. So I think it's not by chance that what we are teaching at the Faculty of Political Science, namely the fact that in order to have democracy, you have to have a certain amount of gender parity, is not by chance, of course, along with economic development, along with education. And although we are living in this very gloomy time, we can say that there are reasons to be helpful, namely the fact that yes, indeed, in Romania, we have the lack of representation of women in public office. Women are underrepresented. However, in the diplomatic field, we have seen recently a dramatic change, and we have more than 1/3 women ambassadors in key positions in Europe. We have reached almost parity in the Americas. But I believe that the change that we can see now in women leadership has been unveiled by the crisis. And we have seen the top level, at the European level, national level, various examples of women taking the stand, defending values, but also at the grassroots level, organizing solidarity networks, trying to defend and help the refugees from Ukraine. And you can see that in our faculty, for instance, the Students' Association mobilized in order to help the Ukrainians that are sheltered in our university dorms. So I believe that we are living in this period where is a great pressure placed on diplomacy, great expectations, great responsibility. So what better way to celebrate the International Women's Day than to look at successful stories, examples of good practices, examples that can inspire us in following such a career. So without further ado, I want to thank you all for having me with you today. Thank the Excellencies for taking the time, and wishing you a very good debate with our students.
Thank you very much, Professor Iancu. Indeed, as you mentioned, it is quite a challenging period, to be honest. And today's day is actually not a very good day to celebrate, because as we speak, we see here in Romania and here in Bucharest many women with their children coming from Ukraine and trying to see where exactly they can have shelter, where they can find accommodation, where they can find food, and how exactly they will be able to continue their lives in this very challenging moment. So indeed, we hope that if we are to discuss about what women want, besides empowerment, they also need protection, they also need safety and security. And it is even more valuable the fact that the diplomatic field is also trying to respond and to address these issues. And I believe that indeed those are some of the thoughts that we also should have in mind today. I would like to start this debate by asking you a very perhaps personal question. If you were to talk to your teenage self, what would you advise yourself when it comes to pursuing a career in diplomacy? And let's see, perhaps the Ambassador Awa would like to provide us with an answer. What would you say to your teenage self, Ambassador Awa?
I would say go. That is situation in my time, you know. I joined foreign affairs in the 80s, was very different. So of course I had plenty of thoughts of prejudices. I was afraid about my family. I had a boyfriend who was not ready to follow me at that time. Today everything is different. The young, the girls, the students, they have not to be compared with us. We are from a former generation. The younger generation will have to have other challenges, but equality, parity will be evident, obvious. So please go, don't hesitate.
Okay, very, very interesting answer. Let's see, Ambassador Riak, what would you say to your teenage self?
Good morning, everybody. And look, can I just begin by acknowledging the words of you both about kind of the circumstances in which we meet today. And in my view, it's just so important that we continue to talk about these issues kind of now more than ever, because I think in these difficult times, as you've all said, women have been impacted more than ever, as they so often are. And the progress we've made is so fragile that it's really important. And I wanted to prioritise this event because this is such a powerful and important opportunity. I'm actually recovering from COVID, so I sound terrible, so apologise for that. But I really, really wanted to be here. Look, can I just introduce myself a little bit, provide a few more words about myself so that you know sort of who I am and how I fit in. So I'm Diana Riak. I live in Brussels. I've got 3 children. I've got two teenage boys, 15 and 13, and a 10-year-old daughter. I'm ambassador to Romania and 4 other countries, and I also work on EU issues alongside my husband, who is the ambassador to the EU. So it's really a family business for us. Look, I'm really pleased to be here because the 2 great passions in my life are diplomacy and people, and particularly building people and growing people and building leaders of the future. And so this is like my dream opportunity to talk to you. So going to the question, stop indulging myself and talking about myself. I was a teenager in the 1990s in New Zealand. Now, New Zealand has a proud heritage of women's issues. We were the first country to give New Zealand women the vote in 1893. We're a pretty equal place, and on the kind of international standings, we rank quite highly, and I'm very proud of that. But in the 1990s, we still had quite a lot of progress to do, and there was a lot of pressure on women to be everything. You know, if you worked hard and you got a good education, you could have a fantastic career, you could have a fantastic family, you could have a fantastic marriage, you could have it all. So there was a lot of freedom, but also a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation on women. And so that was sort of what I grew up with. And I think what I would say to my teenage self is, yes, you absolutely can have it all. Go hard, do it. It's amazing. You're going to have a fantastic journey, but it will be hard work. And if I could just say 3 brief things maybe that I thought about that I think I would specifically say to my teenage self. The first one is, I would say, be patient and be open-minded. There is plenty of time. It's going to be a long journey with lots of fabulous experiences, but take your time. There might be some unexpected twists. You might have to take some choices or do some jobs that maybe weren't the jobs that you thought you would do when you wanted to be a diplomat. But every experience is beneficial, and it will all add up to making you the diplomat or the ambassador that eventually you want to be. So I've done a mix of foreign policy, trade policy, development policy. I've done corporate work, human resources, and I've loved it all. And every piece has made my story stronger. So be open to opportunities. I think the second thing I'd say is that diplomacy is a really human pursuit. So it's all about relationships and connections, and it's about people. So the diplomats that stand out to me the most aren't necessarily the ones with the fantastic Harvard degree or the clever, impressive answer. They're the ones who connect with me, who make an effort, who give me their time and their energy, and who show up. They show up for me and they show up for others. So I'm a diplomat from a small country, and I can never take an invitation for granted. I don't get invited to everything, as a matter of course. I'm not the United States, so I have to make sure that I work hard to build connections and engage with people, and that I get an invitation because of what I bring to the table and because of how I treat people. And so I think just remembering that diplomacy is a very human pursuit, and we see that at the moment in the world around us. It is a very human pursuit, and you can read all of the books and you can know the history of the world inside out, but at the end of the day, it's about making those human connections. And so the final point, sorry, do indulge me a little. The third point that I wanted to make was to be yourself. So I think I spent much of my early career really trying to kind of understand, what does a good diplomat look like? What does the perfect diplomat look like? And I would measure myself against that ideal diplomat, and I would often find myself wanting. And I would often feel that I didn't quite measure up. I suffered a lot from imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I belonged or that I deserved to be where I was. And I think that a lot of women suffer from that, and it's something that I've benefited from talking about, talking with other women, talking with men, talking with people that I trust. I think I felt that pressure to be the great diplomat, the great mum, the great wife, and to be the whole package. And I guess I've learned that to serve myself, to serve my country, to serve my family, I have to find my own story. I have to be authentic. And I just wanted to end by saying that a great friend said to me once something that has really stuck with me when I've grappled with how to kind of fit it all together. She said to me, there is no performance of femaleness that will satisfy everyone. And I think that's so true. So I have to be my own performance and my own version, and I have to own that and be proud of it and believe that the world needs it. So you have all got, I would tell my teenage self, go for it, you can do it, be yourself, be patient, be human, and believe in the ride, and you will have a wonderful time.
Many thanks. So go for it, do it. This is the most important, the key message actually that was sent today, this morning by Ambassador Aware and also by Ambassador Riak. So go for it, dare please to go and pursue your ambitions. And indeed, as I was also thinking while you were talking about my teenage self, which is more or less 10 years ago, so not that long, I was also thinking that I would have loved to have this opportunity to meet inspiring women leaders that are pursuing this career, that could have provided to me with this encouragement and with this motivation. So I really appreciate and admire your work for that. Very inspiring words, and I think that we already have in our here in our Zoom some of the participants that I think they sent to us questions in advance that they would like to ask. And I see that we have, for instance, Emilia Sandu. I think if she is here, maybe she could turn on her camera. Emilia Sandu from Piatra Neamț, from what I know from her from the form. She had one question, and maybe she would like to address it herself. Emilia, are you with us? Let's see. I see her in the chat, but for the moment, perhaps maybe she cannot talk. I will ask her question then on her behalf. So Emilia was asking us, how did you know you were most likely to become a diplomat? So let's see, perhaps Madame Awa, would you like to respond to that? So how did you know you were most likely to become a diplomat?
I just had no idea. Frankly, there was almost nobody in my family who had gone to university, and I was very determined and very good student. So I piled up, political science, a degree in English, then in Arabic, then in Hebrew, then I continued with the Fulbright, etc., etc. And at some point, it was quite obvious, that I could fit an exam, which was called Concours d'Orient, so Oriental exam to join the Foreign Affairs, and that was it. And then I would recommend, exactly as Diana said, I would recommend that all the young girls, because I have also girls, my kids, I have 4 kids, but 2 of them are girls, are educated very differently. The society gives them another image. And that's where probably we as older officials can help. I really want to say here that exactly as my colleague said, it's really a profession which is fit for women, because our capacity, our sensibility to communicate and to be seen as well is very important in this very tough period. Of course, I'm always very much struck by reality when I see the women, the Ukrainian women going out the border. I always have, my eye is different. I always see the women everywhere, and women are 50% of the society. Let's remember that we are there to build for the future on different aspects, a diplomacy which is a little bit different, which is more about soft power, convincing and not imposing. I experienced several crises in my career. I was a spokesperson during 9/11. I was in very tough crisis already, including the migration crisis of 2016. And I see that my sight, my vision is different. When I see the women, immediately my brain is working differently. So women are completely appropriate to this job, and the diplomacy of tomorrow will be built by women with different elements. If you see my different social networks accounts, you will see that during this war, I insisted very much that the pictures I take are showing women. So the French soldiers who arrived last Tuesday in Constanza were amazingly impressive, and the sights, the thing that I was able to catch, I'm very proud of. So you see, we are going to build probably something which will be different in diplomacy, because our feeling, our objectives, our vision are different.
Indeed. Let's see, Ambassador Riak, would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Look, I think that's exactly what I was trying to say before, and I think that says it so well, that women have so much to offer. The world needs this kind of diplomacy, and I think it's taken me a long time to figure that out. I think at first I was trying to be something else because that was the model of diplomacy that I'd seen, and I didn't truly value the soft skills that I brought and that other women bring, and I regret that. But I think this generation has a better chance at honouring and bringing its own skills to the table, and we need those skills at the table. It's interesting for me because my husband is also an ambassador. And so I'm able to watch the way he does the job, and I see how I do the job, and we do it differently. And I'm lucky that I have a husband who's very open to hearing my own suggestions. And sometimes I'll say to him, just pick up the phone. And he's writing this perfect email and he's crafting it beautifully and he's got wonderful arguments. It's all very clever. And I just say, I think you just need to pick up the phone. And I think, you know, in years gone by, and because he is my husband, I'm brave enough to say that, but in years gone by, I might not have said that. So that's just a little example of how we bring something different to the table, and that human side, that empathy, the ability to connect and be close to others, I think, and understand and listen is really important. I was going to be a lawyer, and I spent 2 summers in a big law firm, and I just thought this wasn't going to be for me. Any of you training to be lawyers, I'm sure it's wonderful, but I thought it was going to be too much of the same in an office. And the wonderful thing about diplomacy is you are problem solving all the time. You never quite know what's coming up, and it's a really varied and interesting career. I've done 10 jobs in one already. But I always wanted a job that served my country, where I could feel like I was making a difference. I certainly wasn't strong enough or brave enough to join the military. And although that's what I felt at the time, who knows? And I loved to talk and I loved people. So that's how I ended up in doing it. I did a law degree and international law, particularly appealed.
Very, very interesting indeed. You did more. Yes, you had more jobs in one. I think that this summarizes all. I see that throughout your intervention, people already started to raise some questions. I have also one question on the Facebook chat, but before that, we have here with us Diana Sofia Argumedo Barriere, who would like to ask a question. So please, Diana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be with you all. I'm very honored. And I'm very interested in the part of diplomacy because as an international student, I see the different cultures and I cannot help but be amazed by the diversity that we have in this world. Well, my question is addressed more on the side of what we female face through our lives. Gender violence is something that we still have till this day, and it's something very sad. But I want to address this question to know, how did you, if you guys, faced any of this kind of things, gender violence, during your work environment, and how did you overcome this kind of difficulties?
Many thanks, Diana. You said you are an international student. Could you tell us where
Yes.
you're studying?
Well, right now I'm studying in the University of Bucharest, here in Romania, but I am from El Salvador in America Latina.
Very, very interesting. Many thanks for your questions. So please, let's see, Ambassador Awar, please.
I would say, you know, if you look at statistics, we all experience violence when we were students, when we were citizens in the underground, in the cities, and in our professional life. More than violence, the diplomacy is a world of more than violence. Is prejudices. It's only very late that we had women in the system. For France, by the way, there was no ambassador at all when I joined the ministry. So you see, it's not a question of fight, but it's a question of being able to build your own personality with this environment. And this is very important because you, young generation, you will live other types of violence. So for instance, if you look at my career, I was an Arabist, and I was for 1 year in an Arab university veiled. So I joined the ministry with one of the best curricula in Arabic. I was ready to become a university teacher in Arabic because my level was so on the peninsula. We were very little, etc., etc. I was never posted in an Arab country. The ambassadors refused me. When I was younger, they feared that I would be less credible. And it happened until today. I mean, if you look at it, when join my first ambassador's position, I was refused to go to Oman, to the Emirates, and now again. And the argument was different. It was said, okay, you never served in an Arab country, you're not going to become an ambassador. And how are you going to negotiate the contracts if you're a woman, etc.? So I would say you should not take it personally. You just do your way. You do your, I mean, in those difficult times, your individual self has to be built, whatever the circumstances are. And you should be very strong in your own values. And the values you share, you never change, I would say. I was a student, I was 25, now I'm 60, and I'm the same self. I mean, I'm bold, I'm proud, and I just don't care. I mean, they can comment what they want. I did my best. You see, at the end of the day, it's what it is. If you resent, if you look backwards, if you just feel guilty, it's useless. I mean, look at this crisis. Nobody would imagine what would have happened. So that would be my recommendation. You will trace another path in diplomacy. Women now are going to build the diplomacy of tomorrow, and you're going to be part of it, I'm sure.
Yes, very much, a lot of courage that it took for you to overcome this. Indeed, I was also looking at the statistics while you were explaining, and in fact, yes, the gender violence is an issue that it will be experienced in their lifetime, according to the UNHCR, for 1 in 3 women. So 1 in 3 women will experience sexual or physical violence during their lifetime. This is the estimation that we currently have. And for the verbal violence, 2/3 of women will experience, it is estimated that they will experience verbal violence in their lifetime. And it takes a lot of strength, Ambassador Auer, to tell us what you did. So we appreciate very much this. Ambassador Riag, if you have also your perspective, please.
Look, thank you for the question. I think it's something we have to address and confront and talk about, and that's part of the answer, is to be honest and upfront. And I think women in recent times have made a lot of progress. I think we have a lot to thank for the Me Too movement, and I think that opened a lot of eyes to people. And I think it made a lot of women like myself realise our own stories and kind of confront things that we hadn't sort of really thought about. We just sort of got on with and accepted. So I've experienced all sorts of prejudice and discrimination, but mostly subtle, you know, not extreme, not really out there, but subtle, and it does, and sometimes less subtle. So a couple of stories, perhaps. I will go to dinners and I will often watch who gets introduced first. You know, you're standing around having a glass of wine before dinner and the ambassador will introduce all the men, and then, oh, there's a couple of women left over. Shall we introduce them as well? Or who are they? Where do they belong? Who do they go with? And so, you know, that happens quite often. I think the hardest time for me was certainly when I was pregnant. So I was posted in Geneva to the World Trade Organization. I was 29, I was pregnant with my first child, and you just didn't have pregnant women in the WTO. It's quite a masculine environment anyway. And my ambassador was horrified. He said to me, "You're pregnant in the middle of the Doha round," which for the record is still going. So if I'd waited, I may not have had children. So first of all, I had to deal with the internal discrimination, and my ambassador, who was very unhappy with me and therefore made sure that I didn't attend certain things. This is reasonably recently in a country like New Zealand, where we are very progressive on these things. I would go to meetings, and because diplomacy can be quite status driven, and I was very junior, third secretary, despite being pregnant, if there weren't enough tables, I would sit on the floor. So I remember 8 months pregnant, sitting on the floor for a 6-hour negotiating meeting. And that shouldn't be the way. That is just absolutely unacceptable. So I think one of the things that I do now is I make sure I don't let that happen for young women now. Whatever progress I made, I want to double that. Whatever we made is not enough. So there are women, for example, I fought really hard to get a small amount of maternity leave after I had my baby, and I fought harder that the woman who came after me would get more. So I think we never stand still. We always look for more, and we don't ever, I think I see some women sort of resenting the fact that the woman of the future will get more, and I think, no, you can never look at it like that. You always are pushing for more for the woman in front of you, and I think that makes me enormously proud. So we have, it's not easy, but I also just don't accept it anymore. As Ambassador Auer said, we do, you have a choice. You can get upset, you can get sort of irritated, you can get frustrated, or you can just stand tall and try as much as you possibly can to move forward. Doesn't mean to say I haven't gone to the toilets and had the odd cry on occasion where I felt this is just so hard, given myself permission to feel it, to have a little cry, wipe my eyes, get back out there. But I surround myself by good women and good men. Good women and good men who help me, who believe in me, and who have given me lots of opportunities.
Yes, indeed. Many thanks, actually, because it's due to the work that people like you are doing. Is actually what keeps us evolving and what keeps us motivated to continue pursuing to tackle the challenges that we still face, unfortunately, on many aspects, and the ones that you mentioned are only some of them, which are indeed one of the most important for us, because they're so personal and they're so linked to our development overall in life. So we thank you very, very much for all the efforts that you're doing. I have two questions on the chat, which are very, very interesting. But before that, we have here Ana Luisa Călușeriu, who also has a question. Maybe you can also introduce yourself. Tell us from where you're listening and watching us.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Ana Luisa Călușeriu. I'm a Romanian student. I'm studying currently the Cultural Diplomacy and International Relations at București University. I'm also working somehow in the international relations field. And my question for you is of course, about your diplomatic career. And I'm curious about what is, in fact, what was the most memorable experience you had during your diplomatic career, and maybe how this experience made you more confident. Thank you.
Many thanks indeed. Yes, so basically a positive memory, so to say, because I also had one follow-up question after that with the most challenging perhaps moment, but we will come back to that later. Let's see. So the one that pursued you and motivated you and made you more confident. Ambassador Auer, please.
Definitely the day I was appointed to Romania. So it was so complicated. I was supposed to be appointed in another European country. I'm a specialist of Eastern Europe, so I was expecting the decision. It didn't come. It didn't come for months, weeks, And then I was in a concert in a very nice castle in France, 29th of July. And I was in front of pentru, which was with 4 people, and 2 of them were Romanian. And at some point, I was called in the middle of the concert, saying, "Okay, you were appointed to Bucharest," and that was so crazy. I couldn't take the phone call because it was the middle of the concert, so I waited for the pause, and I started to cry. Contrary to my colleague, I never cried when I was attacked or when I had problems. I always feel I wouldn't say so, because I had an experience as well. You know, now my colleague Isabelle was an ambassador to Ukraine. One day I met her crying, and I was thinking, but why didn't you never feel personally in a difficulty? I don't know. It was protected by I don't know what. But for happy moments, I have plenty, and I'm very emotional about it. But definitely coming to Romania was, you know, I was constantly calling my RH, saying, I tell you, if you appoint me in Finland or somewhere, I would be really furious, and etc. etc. And so when it was Romania, we had he was Vlad, he was a violinist, and he came to Romania later on for the UNESCO festival, and with his parents as well, and it was a very, very nice memory.
Wow, impressive! Indeed, we're very glad by the fact that you received the news, and that you were so glad about it. So thanks for sharing this. Ambassador React, please.
I'm glad that gave me a little bit of a moment in time to think about what my most memorable experiences. There's been so many of them, it's hard to pick one out. But the one that one moment that sticks in my mind is when I was asked, so after I had my third child, my husband was posted in Geneva again, and I was asked to take on the role of the office manager. Now that's not a normal diplomatic role, and but I took it on anyway. I knew that I would learn something from it, and in that role, I was asked to go to Malta to help with the CHOGM meeting, so the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And my job literally was to carry the bags, to set up the rooms, to turn a bedroom into an office. I mean, you do everything as a diplomat. You might be sitting in an impressive meeting or a dinner, and then the next minute you're literally setting up teacups. Especially if you come from a small country like New Zealand, you have to be able and willing to do everything. So I was happily doing that. And then they suddenly realised that one person hadn't showed up. And so could I also, as well as setting up the teacups and the whatever else, could I also please be the senior official chief negotiator for the climate change session that was going on downstairs? So I whipped my suit on, raced downstairs, sat in, did the senior official climate change meetings. This was immediately before the Paris Agreement, so literally the week before the Paris Agreement, quite sensitive discussions. And then when that session finished, I whipped off my suit, ran back upstairs, made sure that our Prime Minister had his tea when he needed it, and got everything. And in that moment, I thought, I actually really love this job. I love the diversity that it brings. I'm chatting with my Prime Minister. I'm leading talks on climate change. I'm moving furniture around. I'm making sure that my team is comfortable and has what they need to eat and drink. And I love the diversity that the job brings me, because it's all about service. It's all about the people that need me, and it's about being versatile, being adaptable. There's never a dull moment. I never know what I'll be asked. And I think that was, and then that evening I went and I confess that I hid behind a pot plant so that I could see the Queen as she came into the Royal Gala. So it really was a day of a bit of everything. And I think that sort of sums up my diplomatic career, that if you are open-minded and you say, yes, I'll do that. I'll carry the bags, because who knows, I might end up meeting the Queen, sitting with the Prime Minister, negotiating climate change. I'll say yes. I'll be the person who's willing to do the job that may not look so appealing, because who knows what it might lead to. I think that was the moment when I thought, yeah, this job is for me, because I can make it my own, and I can say yes, and I can be versatile and do a bit of everything. That's probably small country diplomacy. I'm not quite sure if it's like that being a French diplomat. I think perhaps they might be slightly better resourced than we are, but it's certainly what it's like being a diplomat from New Zealand.
Well, I also think that, flexibility is also key, because challenges just come and go, and you have to grasp the moment and to seize the opportunity. So it's also good to keep that in mind, whether you're already set on your path or not, but flexibility is indeed the key. So many thanks for your answer. I encourage the rest of you that are here with us in Zoom or also on the chat, maybe to connect to Zoom and ask your questions. So raise your hand, open your camera so that I can see the ones that want to ask their questions. Until you have the courage to do that, so I will really insist on you to take this opportunity. I have two questions prepared here. So we have Raluca Genga on the Facebook chat who's asking, who are or were your role models? Let's see, Ambassador.
So I had the chance to work for politicians, President Chirac, but as well ministers, and I learned a lot with them. Politics gives you always this necessity to anticipate and to consider all situations. I'm not saying that I became a politician. For instance, I never considered my job of a diplomat as being part of the political personnel in France, but I learned a lot with them. For instance, with the press, it's quite frustrating somehow that you have a big success. I was happy to listen to the negotiations, the WTO or the climate change, because we did so much with New Zealand in terms of environment and in terms of trade, etc., and in Europe as well. But if you consider at some point that a wrong press report can make everything being not perceived by the population as an effort, you can little by little lose a lot of time. I learned from the politicians not to lose time, to consider the press as it is, but also if there is an article which is wrong, you just don't care. You just continue your path. Diplomacy is not a path which is linear. Sometimes you have success that you don't expect, and sometimes the population, the perception of what you're doing is not there. So for me, role model will be to stick very closely to politicians and to be able to be as adaptive as they are.
Yeah, yes, interesting advice, and very, very accurate indeed, because there are two different dimensions, and yes, they are very chameleonic, so to say, in the political field, so they are able to adapt easily. That's a very valuable lesson. Ambassador Riak?
I think I'm interested in that answer because I'm still very inspired by politicians, and sometimes I wonder whether I could have made a greater difference if I'd gone down a political path, but I was never quite brave enough. And so I do think if you really want to make a difference and be a decision maker, that it's the politicians that wear the heat, and that have to make those really difficult choices, and we work in support of them. We have some fantastic politicians in New Zealand. Our Prime Minister is someone that I'm hugely inspired by, and her mantra of doing the right thing, of kindness, is really inspiring. And she's a trained journalist, so you see that in her responses to situations. She's very careful with her words. She's very measured. She's very generous, but she's also the real deal when you meet her in person. She really is, what you see is what you get. So I think I've always been drawn to strong women who have a clear sense of what their values are and what they stand for. I have a strong sense of my own values, which I've worked on. I've spent a lot of time really thinking about what do I stand for, what are my values, and what is important to me. and I do try to hold to those. Occasionally, my husband describes them as my principles monster, and I've told him that needs to be rebranded because it's not a monster. It's my principles that sit at the core of me. And so I think women who are prepared to make difficult choices, who stand true to who they are. So I think those women can come in all sorts of shapes and forms. So yes, politician will be some of them, but also there are other women. My mum would be one of those women who is strong and courageous. She was a midwife in the 1960s, not an easy time. But also when I look around me, you need role models every day. And the one woman that actually springs to mind when I think of strong women who I admire is the cleaner at our embassy, who is enormously kind and generous to everyone. She knows when we're down. She knows when we need a chocolate biscuit. She knows when we need a bit of a boost. So those role models can come in all shapes and forms. It's the people who are good and kind and steadfast. And I think those are the women that I really rely on and that I turn to.
Indeed, kindness and empathy is what also, yes, brings us to value people. And I remember well the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She was very inspiring for many countries, and even here in Romania, with the tone that she used and the voice that she used to soothe and to calm the people during the COVID pandemic and to explain what challenges are. She was really appreciated throughout Europe. So indeed, a very nice example. I have a question here. I will try to translate it. It's a question in Romania, who is being addressed by a Romanian young professional. I think she's working in journalism. She was asking you whether you would sit, let's say, for instance, an exam at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you would be 30 or under 30, and you would receive the question, don't you believe that you're too young or inexperienced to become a diplomat? Because you're, 30 years old. What would you reply to that? Let's see, who wants to start?
I feel like it must be my turn to go first and give you a break. Look, it's a tricky question, and what I can say is my last job in the Foreign Ministry before I was appointed here as ambassador was in our human resources team, and I was responsible for people capability. So for 2 years I led all of the work on developing our foreign ministry's people, and we were really focused on ensuring that we were developing cadre of talented diplomats for the future, and we were really looking to be a little bit more diverse in who we employed. So we wanted more women, we wanted more of our Indigenous people, we wanted more people who brought something different to the ministry. And so I think we never really considered age. We looked, and I know that we employed some people straight out of university who were 23, 24, and the oldest person I think we employed was in their mid-50s. So what we were really looking at was somebody who brought something valuable and interesting and who understood their country, who understood the job. So if I was told that I was too young, what can you bring at 30? I'd be asking the question back to the person that was employing me. Well, what is it that you want? Because I think the Foreign Ministry in New Zealand is certainly looking for the diversity. There is. And age should not be a barrier to that. It's about what your set of experiences is, what you can contribute, what your skills are, and that can come in every shape and form at all sorts of different ages. So I would be surprised if I was confronted with that question, and I would certainly push through and demonstrate that I had a whole lot to bring to the table. And I think by 30, you certainly do have a lot. I felt I had plenty to bring to the table, but also lots to learn. So you can demonstrate I've got a lot to bring, and I'm also open to learning. I'm open to learning more along the road. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but I would just go for it.
Very, very good advice. Indeed, I also can relate to that because as a person under 30s, I was quite often asked, or maybe not asked, but there were some nuanced answers telling me that there's still a lot of experience ahead. So I also can relate to this question. Let's see, Ambassador, what do you think? What would you reply?
Yes, maybe to complement, I would say that today it's much easier to get proper information. So don't underestimate the challenge. It's a very strong educational and academic, I would say, luggage. It's not something that you just after 2 or 3 years you decide you can join diplomacy. Today as well, I would say, as my colleague, that it's no longer a kind of a unilateral or formal career. You can switch from first job in public or private company, then join diplomacy, etc. Today, I would say that in the French civil service, we also have 50% of people who are taken by contract. So you can also consider diplomacy through what we call cultural or educational diplomacy. 50% of the civil servants or the French employees abroad are working in French institutes, and we have around the table my colleagues that are coming from different places, and that's also very interesting because it means that my team, for instance, they came from Julien, the director of the French Institute. He comes from Strasbourg, a municipality, and it really gives a very strong impetus. So Joseph, he was working in the Ministry for Justice, and then it reinforced the international capacities of the French states as well. Networking today is key, and this you get it with experience. So if I sum up, strong economic and academic background, you take your time, as my colleague was saying. You don't become an ambassador just it's a lot of experience. It's a lot of professional, I would say, capacities being put on the table. And then at the end of the day, diplomacy is no longer what it was. You can join diplomacy by several ways and different paths.
Very valuable piece of advice. Thank you very much, and it's also motivating and to be kept in mind when future references or questions related to that. I see that we have here Dumitrița Rogojinaru. If I'm not mistaken, Dumitrița is the UN Youth Delegation from Romania, right? So let's see, Dumitrița, what is your question to the ambassadors?
Thank you, Tana, and good morning, everyone. I hope I'm hearing fine. So my question, yes, Tana already did a description for me. I'm Dumitrița. I'm currently studying law and political science at the University of Bucharest, and I'm the UN Youth Delegate of Romania. So in the interest of all female, young female I'm representing, I wanted to ask you, what should a government or even the Romanian government do in order to increase women representativity in politics, in diplomacy, and even in leadership? In your opinion, what should be a good strategy in this direction? Thank you.
Please, let's see. Ambassador Riyad, please.
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? That's an excellent question, and I think it's one that leaders around the world have grappled with for a long time and have made some progress, but I think there's a lot more to be done. So what should they do and what could they do? I mean, if we look around the world, there's governments and have taken a lot of different approaches. So there are some that have, some of the Nordics, I think, that have implemented quotas and have put in some quite tough conditions around ensuring that that they see more women in leadership. I think the research, as I understand it, around that is mixed. So I think that for me, the main thing that you can do is there are a few things that you can do. First of all, I think having, as we talked briefly about, having strong women leaders in government, in politics, having them available is really important. So for me, growing up, the first female Prime Minister in New Zealand was 1997, I think. That was and that was a step forward. So having those women available in those key roles and seeing them and knowing that it is possible. I think having forums where women can talk. So within our foreign ministry, we have women's networks, we have young women networks, we have women's ambassadors networks. So having places for women to talk. We have women's networks across government, across the public sector. We have a ministry for women. So we have a dedicated ministry which focuses on women's issues, and and I know in Belgium there is a minister who focuses entirely on gender equality, and I had the privilege of meeting her recently. So you've got someone, the government is prioritising these issues and calling out the challenges and actually focused, because you need to put some resources behind it. These are not issues that will necessarily solve themselves. So I think having a forum, dedicating resources, and then I think women have to take some responsibility and do, unfortunately, the fact is that we still have to do some of the heavy lifting ourselves in terms of supporting each other, calling out the issues, mentoring other women, sponsoring other women, creating opportunities. So I think there is a lot that can be done. And that's just a few ideas, but I think resourcing it, admitting it, calling it out, keeping on pushing forward, those are some of my first thoughts on what we can do to ensure that we continue to move forward. And the kind of thing that you're doing, standing up, getting engaged, getting involved, being a UN youth delegate, I applaud you for taking these opportunities, and I wish you lots of good luck, and all of the women that are here today, lots of good luck.
Many thanks. Ambassador, please.
Yes, I believe very much in mentorship. I don't believe I have the key answer for the younger generation, but I take a lot of time with universities. I'm head as well of a network of French diplomats, and I always go doing mentorship for the younger, because I feel that the younger women's generation lack confidence, and that's the main thing we can provide. I don't know why. I don't know why confidence is one of the key difficulty of young professionals. It's not only the students who are in this situation, but the women. If you take promotions inside the systems, 80% of the promotions are being asked by men until now. So it's a long-term process to show that education has been given to women different from the men, and mentorship is very, very important. I give confidence to. So I'm part of plenty of networks. This afternoon I'm doing with La Sorbonne a kind of intervention about that. But I'm doing as well, my professional association has 800 young diplomats, and half of them are women, because it's the oriental part of the French diplomacy. And I'm doing a lot of inside the ministry. As my colleague, I was part of the exam juries, and we insist very much on the fact that parity is imposed. We have quotas, we have parity in juries, we have parity as well in the teams, etc. I insist very much that my team is respect that equality gender issue.
Many thanks indeed. We also believe in the true power of mentorship. We believe that this is key, and actually this is one of the principles that we have at Europuls, the Center of European Expertise. We have many young volunteers that are joining us to help us and also to learn from us on the EU affairs and the mentorship. Indeed, we have seen across the time that it has proven a very valuable asset in helping and forming young professionals that are still here in our organization or already departed and working and being successful in their fields. We have a question, two questions actually, coming from Facebook. One is coming from Mona Take. She is a very well-known voice here in Romania, a voice literally saying, and in practice a voice, because she has been very well listened at the radio channels here in Romania, so people know her from her voice. But she also got very involved during the 2019 European elections to promote the fact that we need to go and vote, and she is now with her baby, so this is why she's not able to join us and to ask this question directly. But she asked me to ask you, how do we support and how do we empower women that are refugees? So how exactly will we be able to integrate them and to give them wings to develop and to grow after what happened in Ukraine? What are your thoughts? What do you think? If you have any ideas, who would like to start?
Maybe I should go first. Look, it's a really difficult. It's probably possibly the most important question at the moment, isn't it? And it's a really difficult question. And I think this is going to be a long journey. And I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. And I think there's a lot that we don't know yet in terms of where these refugees will end up, in which countries, how many there will be, how well supported they will be by the countries that they find themselves in. I think what we can do as a government, what we can do as fellow human beings, I think there are options available to us. And I think the first thing that we're doing is by asking the question, is having the conversation and saying, okay, what can we do? Let's talk about this. Let's share ideas. Let's not expect one person or one organization to have all the answers. Let's talk. Let's gather ideas. Let's use expert advice. I'm not an expert on refugees, but there are plenty of people out there who have worked closely with refugees, who are humanitarian experts, who do know and have lots of experience. Unfortunately, this is not the first refugee crisis that the world has faced. And unfortunately, there is a lot of experience across Europe, especially over the last decade, but also across the world. So I think I'm a big believer in listening to the experts. So listening to those who have the knowledge, listening to those who work closely with refugees. I think, and listening to the women themselves. Let's find a way to hear directly from them what they need, what they want, what makes a difference to them. I think it's easy for us to assume and to impose, but I think right now the need is to deal with the immediate needs. That's what we need to focus on, but also to listen. I think we need to take time to listen to the experts and to listen to the women themselves as they tell us what it is they need right at the moment. And then I think, as I said, time will tell, and it's going to evolve, and those needs will change and adapt, and we need to be able to change and adapt. Already we see a lot of countries doing some enormously good work, getting things to the people that need them, but that's going to change, and I think, that's what I would say. Listen to the experts and listen to the women themselves.
France is also. I'm sorry. Please go on.
No, sorry about that, because I'm bombarded. You know, I have my 3 mobiles, my 2 tablets, and of course the question of refugees in the war period, and the position of Romania makes us as key actors of this crisis, especially in Europe. You know. Nobody was prepared to have a war in Europe. Nobody was prepared to such a catastrophe. And that's a key element of what we are providing as the European Union. France is president of the Council, so we are day and night trying to negotiate first. So that's the humanitarian corridors. I must tell you that what has been proposed and rejected yesterday was just not a humanitarian corridor. The Russian has proposed to evacuate the population of Mariupol and of Kiev to Russia and or Belarus, which is a shame. I say after the different sequences where the diplomatic efforts were actually a joke. The Russian president actually played with all the European Union. Actually, it was just a lie that we were having in front of us. Today, the humanitarian question and today the humanitarian negotiation has started again, and it's crucial. It's crucial because in no wartime there was a situation where in Europe the international conventions were not respected. It is a flagrant violation of all the principles, you know, sovereignty of a country, but also security, and the sanctions follow that. At the European Union level, we are going to organize in Paris on Thursday a European Council, and I'm currently as well preparing the French response because all the French NGOs and civil society is getting so angry, so prepared to send some help here that every minute I have doctors, I have NGOs, I have the Red Cross from France. Already we had those kinds of things. I must finish to say that the Romanian authorities and the Romanian population, the Romanians, were amazing. I mean, of generosity, solidarity, and at this stage we didn't actually implement the state-to-state mechanism for European aid because you didn't need. So this is, we are very proud of Romania in this crisis. Finally, I must also say that we're using the borders as places where we can get the refugees going towards our countries. We give immediately to the Ukrainian citizens and all their families an immediate capacity to go to France. And I must say today, after 12 days of war, of this dreadful and dramatic invasion, I'm also proud of my country because we reacted very quickly, and in no other crisis we gave that possibility to all the refugees to go and enter the French territory.
Indeed, many thanks. And also the fact that France is holding the rotating presidency of the Council enormously helped at the fact that the decisions were taken very, very fast. We are already at EU level, they have adopted a temporary protection directive, all the sanctions that have been adopted in a very quick way. It's also thanks to the fact that you're holding the rotating presidency in these challenging times, but with very full responsibility and professionalism. So this is also thanks to your efforts as well. Maybe one last question, and then perhaps, or maybe Professor Alexandra Iancu would like to have some remarks or some questions.
Thank you. I find this debate very instructive for for our young students, and because they are drawn into international relations, but also they're highly involved in society. They're organizing fundraising campaigns. They are trying to connect, for instance, with the refugees and their families. So there is a huge effort deployed by our students. But there is also a lesson on how to, of various facets that they do not know about this job. They tend to be quite competitive in academic terms, but they do not have this exposure of previous experiences and how to develop and think about their careers. And Your Excellencies, you pointed out that nowadays there are various trajectories leading to a diplomatic career is quite different as in the past. However, there are some skills that should be trained, and some of them were already mentioned in your intervention. If you are to nudge our younger students into particular profession or to a particular path, not necessarily going and pass their exams, directly going to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what would be the must-have skills for training in order to reach a diplomatic career? Thank you so much.
Many thanks, please.
I always say to my students, when I have some, you should write some analysis and a good analysis. I mean, competition, you know, diplomats have a lot of competitors. We have think tanks, we have journalists, but our value is if we could go forward. And to go forward, we have to write. On one page, you have to be able to convince about your analysis, your vision of the situation, and what is well expressed as well is what is the next step, you know. So write it, and sometimes I say as well, write it in several languages. I mean, if you listen to me in French, I'm not speaking the same language as in English, and that's the second value a diplomat has to have, to be intelligible, to be able to pass a message in different language. And that's an asset. I mean, in Romania, all the academic training is very strong on languages. You are very strong people in knowing and writing in different languages. Diplomats in Romania are very strong about that. So this has to be, this is an asset. This is really something to be put forward in world diplomacy.
Thank you. I would agree. Communication is absolutely critical. Being able to communicate clearly and articulately. I'm very lucky that so often things are in English, but I'm conscious that I speak with a very heavy New Zealand accent, and at times I have to work hard, even in my own language, to speak clearly and be understood. So communication, and written communication particularly, it's still a fairly formal career, I think, and you know, those formal communications remain important. The formal messages that we send home, there's an art and a craft to them, and so being able to quickly and succinctly distill information and share it effectively. But the two other things that I would add briefly are obviously, diplomacy happens on the international stage, but it's absolutely about your own country and pursuing the interests of your own country. So it's really important that you know your own country well, that you know what its values are, what its interests are, what its history is, that you can tell the story of your own country and your people, because that is what you are. That is what you are there to serve. So I think often when we had people seeking to join the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, they were very focused on the rest of the world, and we wanted to hear more from them about their own country and what it is, what difference they could make for their own country. So understanding Romania and where Romania fits in the world, and what Romania is trying to achieve, and what Romania's story is, or El Salvador, or wherever it is that you're seeking to represent. I think that is really, really important. And finally, I can't help but mention also resilience and well-being. I think putting skills in your toolkit about understanding yourself, knowing what you do well, knowing how to look after yourself, knowing how to fill up your own tank. Diplomacy is a long game and a hard game at times, and I think it's really important that you know yourself well, and that you are learning how to look after yourself. Otherwise, you cannot serve others if you cannot look after yourself. So I always put well-being as number one on our team operational plan, and that's a little unusual in our foreign ministry, but I put that first deliberately, because if my people are not well and my people are not looking after themselves, I cannot achieve anything. So do make time to understand yourself and what it is that you need to thrive in the world, and everything will follow from that.
With these valuable lessons in mind, I believe that we could say that this way of celebrating the International Women's Day today was useful, at least for me personally, and I think that from the colleagues that have been watching it, I have seen many positive reactions actually in the chat and also in the private messages. People were very interested to ask their questions, and I'm very glad that Your Excellencies took the time in these challenging circumstances to interact with students and to answer to the questions. I think that we have had the unique opportunity to learn some lessons from strong and successful women who managed to make their voices heard, and you throughout your whole activity and through your openness, you really represent from our point of view, and I'm sure from the point of view of the participants, a model for many young people and young female as well. I think that at Europuls we are now feeling more empowered, personally, and also my colleagues, my talented colleagues that managed to make this event to be possible. We also thank our partners from the Faculty of Political Science for the fact that they echoed our idea and they promoted it throughout the network of the universities. And we also are thankful to the French Embassy in Romania and to the French Institute in Romania for their overall support of all the Europuls activities. So this concludes our first session. For those of you who are still watching us, do not forget that at 2 p.m. Romanian time, we will have the second panel of our Women in Diplomacy debate. The second panel will focus on perspectives of Romanian representatives building an international career. You will be able to interact with Her Excellency Iulia Matei, representative at the permanent representation of Romania in the EU. Also with Ramona Strugariu, MEP, member of the European Parliament from the Renew Europe Group, and Iulia Motov, who's a judge at the European Court of Human Rights. I'm sure that they will all have very interesting things to say. Thank you very much for watching us, and I wish you a happy International Women's Day, and we will stay in touch. Many thanks. Goodbye.